Welcome back again to Last Week I Watched. I'm Mark, and I watch movies and TV shows and review them to help you decide whether or not they're worth your time. So I hope everyone had a good Easter, they've watched some stuff, they've gorged themselves on chocolate. I've watched a few new things, and here's what I want to talk about this week. So first up is Mother/Android, War of the Worlds, The Strange House, Halloween, The Mansion, and a Madea Homecoming. So let's talk about them. Okay, so first up is Mother/Android. It's a bit of a strange title. It's got a hyphen in the middle of it. It's a film from 2021 starring Chloe Grace Moretz, Algie Smith, and Raul Castillo, and it's showing on Netflix. So in this one, the world slides into a sort of a post-apocalypse after a violent android uprising, and Georgia, played by Chloe Grace Moretz, she's pregnant to her boyfriend Sam, played by Algie Smith, and they have to flee across no man's land, trying to avoid the androids and reach safety. Wow, I don't know what to say about this one. This movie was boring. Absolutely nothing much happens. The androids barely feature in the story at all. I understand that the movie didn't have the largest budget, which is fine. You can make a good film without a massive budget. And I've seen other films do much better than this. For a science fiction film, there's actually very little science fiction in it. It's mostly just obsessed with Georgia not wanting her baby. She's not even really sure if she wants Sam, and she's feeling trapped by the situation. And the android uprising is just something that goes on in the background to that, really. Honestly, you could have just left the android AI thing out of the film and made a drama about an unwanted teen pregnancy. It really doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Tonally, it's all over the place, but then it doesn't seem to have any sort of real vision for the android elements at all. It occasionally throws some small action sequences at you, but even those aren't that interesting. A sort of 5-minute motorcycle chase through a forest pursued by CGI drones isn't very exciting and isn't fooling anyone. There's not much they can do with racing through a grove of pine trees, really, and then it's almost immediately back to melodrama and Georgia being unpleasant to Sam, and you sort of wonder how the hell he ever got with her in the first place and why he puts up with her. You never really find yourself caring about any of the characters in it either. Chloe Grace Moretz, she's a really good actress, but she's been in some real stinkers lately, and I don't get what's up with that. This film is really similar in the story to Shadow in the Cloud, where she played the pregnant woman trying to take her baby to freedom on the World War II plane. But that was better than this, at least. It had some action, it had some decent effects, but I just don't understand why she keeps getting these terrible low-budget films. She does the best she can with what she's got, but honestly, I just don't think there's that much there in this film. There's not enough story to sustain its runtime, and there's no atmosphere or world building or anything to sort of fill in the runtime. Honestly, it was a struggle to get through it, and it really doesn't reward your patience. Even the ending was devoid of any sort of actual impact, since you never care about the characters at all. And if the androids are really hell-bent on wiping you out, I don't think fleeing to another country is going to make much difference anyway. They're just going to get round to you eventually anyway. I can't recommend this. Don't bother watching this film. It's terrible, it's boring, it's not worth your time. Okay, next up is War of the Worlds. This is a film from 2005. It's the Tom Cruise version with Dakota Fanning and Tim Robbins, and it was showing on Netflix. So this is like the book, I guess. It's an alien invasion threatening the future of humanity. In this one, blue-collar worker and deadbeat dad Ray Ferrier, played by Tom Cruise, is fleeing from New York to Boston with his children while trying to evade the alien tripods, marauding aliens, and selfish, panicked human beings. Now, this is a modern update from Steven Spielberg of H.G. Wells' 1898 novel War of the Worlds. It follows much of the original story structure, but it updates it to a modern setting, largely focusing on Ray and his children fleeing instead. There's much less focus on trying to understand or fight the invaders. It's a more personal, contained story, keeping the focus low to the ground on the family and sort of intermixing it with the panic of other people and the breakdown of society as people selfishly climb over each other to get away. It always seems likely that in the event of a disaster, a lot of people will drop the pretense of civilization and do anything to survive, including robbing or killing other people. In some ways, the humans aren't much better than the invaders, and civilization is much more of a thin veneer than we realize. The movie's very good. It's a Spielberg production after all, and the cast do a great job, but I didn't really ever buy Tom Cruise as a deadbeat dad. He's just too boyish. He looks like he's an older brother of the teen boy rather than dad. Tim Robbins does a good job in this, as well as the unstable Ogilvy, in quite a tense scene when they're trying to evade Martian hunters, and you're not quite sure if they'll find them or Ogilvy will do something stupid and just give them all away. The effects are excellent as expected. They still hold up really well after all this time. And rewatching it, I was surprised at how little, though, the Martians are in the film. You don't see them very often except for a few sequences. They aren't even sort of seen looming in the distance or around the place very often. So you kind of get the impression that there aren't very many of them. I do wonder if they were minimized to keep the effects budget down, and if that was another reason for keeping the focus on the family drama rather than the military fighting off the Martians. Overall though, it's still a worthwhile adaptation. It sticks most of the story pretty well. I recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. I'm still kind of interested though in seeing an authentic adaptation set in the right period, so I might have a hunt for that. I've heard there's a BBC adaptation that's period accurate, so I'll let you know how that goes. Alright, next up is The Strange House. It's a film from 2020. It stars Leon Orlandini, Benno Roscoff and Julia Koshitz. Apologies if I have mangled your names. And this one was showing on Netflix. So Hendrik, played by Leon Orlandini, is vexed that his mother, Julia Koshitz, has decided to move him and his little brother, Eddie, played by Benno Roscoff, to a village in the south of Austria. To make matters worse, the local villagers shun the family's home. They say it's been haunted ever since a mother poisoned her children there many years ago. When a sleepwalking Eddie starts carving strange symbols into the walls, Henrik and his friends set out to discover the secret of the strange house. This is an Austrian film. It's called Das Schurige Haus. Apology, I didn't do German in school. Also known as The Scary House or The Strange House. Now, I've never quite understood the need for renaming films in different territories. I get that there's an English equivalent, that's fine, but why it's interchangeable between scary and strange, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, this was quite a good teen adventure / mystery film. It has some horror elements as well, which is suitable for the whole family. Sure, it's got some scary sequences, but there's nothing really gory or super terrifying. The children make friends with a couple of local kids, Fritz and Ida. Fritz is a super nerd with no filter, and he's a lot of fun and something a bit different from the usual nerd stereotype. And Ida is a teen girl who could have just been there as a potential love interest for Hendrik, but she's surprisingly well fleshed out as a character. She's smart and she doesn't necessarily need Hendrik, so they all bring their own things to the group, which is really good. The group starts to investigate the mystery of the house, and they help to resolve the issues of the previous family so they can go to their rest finally. When the film isn't throwing spooky sequences at you though, the film is surprisingly sweet, but without being overly sickly, and it returns the elements of humanity and humour that keep it grounded, and it provides some relief from the tension before putting the screws back on again. I had a good time with this one. I was actually really surprised. The kids are a fun group. There's sort of shades of the Goonies there as they solve the secret with humour and determination and try to save their family from the sinister elements. I recommend you check it out. Even if you don't have kids, it's still a good time. Alright, next up was Halloween. This is the 2007 movie. It stars Scout Taylor Compton, Malcolm McDowell and Tyler Mane, and it's showing on Netflix. So after being committed for 17 years, Michael Myers escapes from the mental institution yet again and immediately returns to Haddonfield to find his baby sister Laurie. Now this one is the Rob Zombie remake of the original 1978 film, and yet it's the 9th installment in the series. Zombie decided to remake it and add in an origin story this time to add more interest to Michael Myers, who has become kind of predictable, I guess, after 9 installments. The origin story does add some new interest to the story, but overall it's not that interesting, really. There's only so much you can do with a character who is fairly one note anyway. He's clearly a psychopath, and then combined with an abusive home life, he's clearly on a sad path, and after murdering a bunch of people, he ends up in the psychiatric facility and returns on Halloween Halloween, murdering his way around town while looking for a sister. So any kind of background given to Michael, it ultimately makes no real difference, as he just returns to being the exact same kind of character he always is, the silent murderous killer. Overall, it's just an updated remake of the original film, really with some backstory tacked on. It does a reasonable job, but it quickly falls into the same rut of him just killing teenagers around town. And if you haven't seen the original and you've just jumped on it now, then you would probably enjoy it, I guess. But if you've been around for the previous 8 installments, then you're probably left wondering, what the hell? It's really not as different as it likes to think it is. Also, Malcolm McDowell, he's a really good actor, but what the hell is going on with his hair in this? I don't understand the whole a doctor with this like really long lanky hair that he's pushing out of his face like he's sort of grunge from the 80s or something. It's just a super weird choice. He's also clearly too old for it as a style too, and he doesn't seem to be playing the cool hippie counselor type of thing, so it's just weirdly distracting. It really did make me want the original Donald Pleasance Loomis back. Interestingly though, while the film did okay, the sequel from Zombie to this made some even more weird choices to make Laurie into the killer, and the sequel tanked. Zombie didn't bother returning for the next installment after that, which weirdly returned to the original series and just kind of disowns these two films. I don't know that it introduces enough elements to really make it a must-see, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you're new to the series and are interested in the backstory. But I don't think it trumps the original film, and if you're just wanting a giant man in a bleached Captain Kirk mask to lurch around and kill teens, then the original is still the best. Alright, next up is The Mansion. It's a film from 2017 starring Mark Gerasou, Ludovic and Vanessa Judah? Guide? I don't know. It's French. And it's showing on Netflix. So this one's about a group of students. They come to celebrate New Year's at an old manor house. It's isolated from everything there. They're ready to party. But soon after their arrival, strange events disrupt their party, and things quickly turn into a horrific nightmare. This one's a French horror comedy. It's tonally similar, I guess, to Tucker and Dale vs. Evil or Shaun of the Dead. It takes that sort of the cliched horror tropes of someone stalking and murdering, partying young people, and sort of subverts it into a farcical Agatha Christie style, and then there were none. The students all fall into the usual stereotypes: the shy girls, the loose girl, the stoner, the virgin, etc. But their deaths are usually clever and plays on an element of their character. So, for example, the ridiculously over-endowed black guy ultimately meets his end because of his large appendage. The film is surprisingly funny, and while the comedy does take the edge off the horror elements a little, once it starts to ramp up, the horror and the bodies start to drop. It steadily keeps the pressure on while trying to unravel the central mystery of who is killing them and why. When it's finally revealed who's behind it, it makes sense, but it's quite twisted. Clearly this person is in need of some serious psychiatric help. I actually had a really good time with this. It was quite unexpected. I didn't know anything about it going in. It was funny, and even though the character traits are exaggerated for comedic effect, and some of them can get a little bit annoying as people, they do ultimately meet a fate anyway, so if you're just bugged by someone, just hang out there long enough, they probably won't make it. But I had a good time with it. It was fun to watch a horror that doesn't take itself super serious. I recommend it if you're into the horror comedy genre. You might have an unexpectedly fun time with it. Alright, finally is Madea Homecoming. It's from 2022, starring Tyler Perry, Brendan O'Carroll and David Mann. It's showing on Netflix. So, I don't know if you're aware, but Madea is, I guess, a large black woman, but she's played in drag by a large black man. In this case, Madea, played by Tyler Perry again, she hosts a gathering at home for her great-grandson's college graduation, and family drama erupts. Due to the ongoing dumpster fire that is COVID, we find ourselves increasingly desperate for a laugh, so when I saw this new Madea comedy on Netflix, and it features Mrs. Brown, Brendan O'Carroll from Mrs. Brown's Boys, we were a bit intrigued. I haven't necessarily seen all the other series. I believe there are quite a few, but I've seen one or two of them, and they were funny, so I figured, okay, this might be funny. Some of the other Madea movies have been fun. They're usually just light, they're easygoing comedy, so I had some hope for this one, that this might might cheer us up. And sure enough, there are some laughs to be had, but there's perhaps not enough story there to sustain its runtime, so it just kind of beats some jokes to death, running over long. You first notice at the beginning when Mr. Brown is stoking the barbecue with petrol. You know he's going to have a terrible accident. It's quite well telegraphed. As a side note, one of the boys I went to school with was horrifically burned after putting petrol on a fire, so I kind of had mixed feelings about this gag. But he basically sets himself on fire with what is obviously poorly CGI fire and runs around the yard, inexplicably not setting fire to the yard or anything there, or bothering to drop and roll on the ground, while Madea sort of takes her sweet time, staggers out of the kitchen with a tiny teacup of water and throws it on. Then tries to use the hose and doesn't get any water pressure, etc. And it just basically goes on for way too long and actually becomes kind of excruciating in the end. And sadly, the pacing is like that throughout the film, which is a shame because there are some laughs in there, but a lot of the time it's that problem, or just, characters loudly talking over each other and yelling. It needed more laughs, more story, and just sort of tighten that pacing right up. If you're going to run the joke for a while, then extend the joke in some way, but don't run it until it becomes awkward and uncomfortable. It's definitely a problem with this. Overall, the movie is sort of meh. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed with it. It was fine. I didn't have to engage my brain, but I wouldn't bother watching it again. If you're into the Madea series, maybe check it out. It has some nostalgia if you're into any of the characters, but it just doesn't have enough there really to justify its runtime, so maybe wouldn't bother. Alright, so those are my suggestions for this week. I hope they're of some use to you if you've seen any of those already or you're thinking about watching them. Feel free to leave some comments below, let me know what you thought. If you have any other suggestions, leave them below. I'm happy to check them out. As always, please do click on the like and subscribe. I think I have an entire 2 subscribers so far, so it'd be really nice if you could see your way clear to pushing that button. Smash that like for me. As always, there's also my Twitter link down there as well. I tweet as I watch things. If you want to jump on there and comment, or you want to, get up to the minute suggestions, check that out. And I will see you next time. I hope you're all safe and well. Enjoy some movies and TV, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching now. Bye.